Good afternoon and welcome back to Dynamics 365 Human Resources. We are continuing to configure the Human Resource module of Finance and Operation. So in my previous video, we talked about how you configure employment types. And in this video, we are going to focus on the identification IDs. So you must be very familiar with the homepage of Finance and Operation. And if this is the first time you are pondering upon my video, do make sure that you see other videos that I've created in which we are actually configuring the human resources, and from the very beginning, you should know what exactly are the things that you need to configure as an IT consultant within this space. So let's go right into it. So within the home page, as you can see, you can scroll to human resources, navigate into setup, and we are going to talk about the issuing agencies. So if you click on issuing agencies, you have two agencies at the moment, which you can configure. And of course, you can have more than one, or you can have simply one. So a government would be like a federal legislation, a state in Canada, a state would be more like a province. State is very familiar to the US. And this is how you will configure it. Simply just click new, and an issuing agency shows up. Give it a name. You don't need to really give an address, not very applicable, but if you need to go in a bit more detail, you can put in an address. It doesn't really show up anywhere in the drop-down menus when you select the issuing agency, and of course their contact information if relevant. And this is the issuing agency which is relevant to the IDs. And then identification types is the another topic that I want to touch base, because they both tie together. So if you go into identification types, there are different kind of identifications that you can configure in the system, and it really depends on your client. So whatever they use in order to identify a unique identifier for their employees, for instance. So the most common one that I have seen is driver's license. And the way we would configure a driver's license actually, and the social insurance number. So these are the two that I've seen the most commonly used, and the passport not so much. But driver's license, let's focus on that. So when you click new, you would have the identification type. So if I click on edit, now you can't change it, right? Because you've saved it once, so you can't change it. So if you want to make changes to the identification type, for instance, the way it's displayed, you would have to delete it and then create a new one. So give it a name of that type, give it a bit of a description, and of course always check for duplicates. You don't want the system to accept multiple driver's licenses that are duplicates for multiple employees. So by any chance, if you are entering the value, you want to make sure that it is unique, because everyone has a unique driver's license. So this Boolean field actually helps you trigger that. So prompt you when you are entering, or when a driver's license already exists in the system. So the allowed values, so let's create a new one actually, and then we can talk about what are the allowed values. If I click, I can say DL for driver license, just to be repetitive. I can do check duplicates, and if I save this, now I have all values available for me. So within the allowed values, I have all values, which means that you can have anything from numbers to letters, and even if you like to have the special characters, that can also be possible in all values. You can have numbers and letters only, so no characters, or numbers only. So it really depends on the organization or the actual country that you are configuring for, so how their driver's license really work. So in all values, we can define a length. So 6 would be the total length, and you save it. And the format, right now the format is blank, so you could see that the format can be anything between that. And identification type, we can make it as a driver license, and you just save it. There are the ones that are, you could use as numbers and letters, for instance. In this case, you have to define the format. So the way you would do is, you want to put AL, for instance. That would be the very start of your driver's license every time you select this identification type, and then you have to put the number sign. So we already have 2 characters, 3, 4, 5, and 6, so maximum of 6 characters in length. And oh, you can see that the format can only contain that. Let's see, we can make it this way. Now it should be fine. So now we can at least use this with numbers and letters. So the letters, I guess we don't want to put it as defaulted. So in this case, now you can have numbers and letters at the length of 6. And very similar thing with numbers only. You keep the format as is, and then now if you save it, now if I were to add this or use this driver's license for against an employee, I can only enter numbers. And then if I were to add a letter or any other character, it will give me, or it will prompt me that I am not allowed to do so. So that is identification types, and of course you could use this in the parameters. I think we've talked about it in parameters. So do go to one of the videos where I set human resources parameters, and you default an identification type. So every time you create a new employee in the system, then the identification type is defaulted to that particular value that you configure here, and then you can enter that information. So instead of selecting every time when you create a new employee, the default value simply just helps you have it selected for you. Of course, you can always change it, but that's something just to do a shortcut for us. So with that, I will close this video, and then we're gonna start talking a bit more about the reason codes and other configurations that are applicable to human resources. And at some point, we are going to start talking about the processes, which is the most applicable scenarios when it comes to consulting.